want to start this morning by sharing a word of thanks to some folks for the last several weeks. I told Stephanie I would thank her this morning, even though she's not here. She has a Sunday off today, a well-deserved break, but I told her that I would thank her in front of you all because I do appreciate her leading worship in the last two Sundays, and especially her sermons as part of this sermon series. Appreciate her gift of word and sharing in leadership for worship, and I know that you have shared similar words with her and with me of appreciation for her. I want to say a word of thanks to Joan Euler. I don't know if Joan's here or not. A couple months ago I went to Joan and I said, Joan, I'm going to do a sermon series called Lord of the Dance. And every Sunday I want to do something with dance. I want to see some movement, see something visual with dance. I said, work on that and see what you come up with. And Joan pulled together some of her friends and a few of our younger folks from the church here. And each Sunday they've presented some movement to music and dance. And I appreciate all of those folks doing that over the past few weeks. I want to say a word of thanks to the Lenten Study Group who has met for the past few weeks. We have one more meeting on Wednesday night. Great group of folks. We've gotten together and we've studied this book called Hard to Dance with the Devil on Your Back. You may recognize that title because that is a verse from the song that we sang at the beginning of worship called The Lord of the Dance, which of course is also the title of the sermon series during the season of Lent. These folks have given me much wisdom as we have discussed this book, and some of that wisdom has entered into the sermons, as was planned, using this book and connecting it to the sermon series. So thank you to them. Today marks the conclusion of the Lenten sermon series because next Sunday we have a special presentation by our celebration singers, and our youth drama troupe is going to bring us a modern day version drama of Holy Week and that time. And so we're looking forward to that group and the celebration singers bringing us the message next week. I want to share some words this morning, but the bulk of this message will come from the hands of Gloria, which I'm delighted to have with us this morning. I want to share a few words before I introduce them and allow them to share their gift of movement and music with you. We've been looking at dance as a representation, as I shared with the children, as a symbol of life. Exploring dance as a guide or a help to how we're called to live life as disciples. And a reminder that the sermon series title, Lord of the Dance, that there is a spirit, there is a Lord that leads us in that dance of life. It is a guiding spirit. It is a challenging spirit at times, and times it is a comforting spirit. That it is the Lord who leads us in the dance of life. But as the book title says, sometimes it's hard to dance with the devil on your back. Whether it be choices that we have made that turn out to be not so good choices, or simply the things that are placed upon us, thrust upon us in life sometimes, or some combination of that, whatever it is, sometimes it's hard to dance. Sometimes it's hard to live life with the passion and the engagement in life as God has called us to live it. The last chapter in our study book is called Dancing with Holes in Your Moccasins. And it uses two scripture verses as a basis for the last chapter. They are the two verses that Kathy read this morning, one from Matthew and one from Revelation. The first one from Matthew is this wonderful and very simple image and use of light as a symbol of God's enduring spirit that leads us and lights our way in the dance. And the challenge to us to be light for others, to let Christ's light shine through us so that others might know Christ. The other reading, of course, is from the last book of the Bible, Revelation. And it describes this wonderful vision where healing and transformation occurs. And that healing and that transformation occurs in the presence of a God who is always with us in all of life. In the study book, the author discusses also the book of Job. I know that most of you are familiar with the book of Job. Job is the fellow that we hear complaining a lot. And his main complaint is, God, I've been good. I've been a good man, and bad things still happen to me. We remember, and the author of the book talks about the reality that the book of Job and all of the Bible reminds us of God's promise. And it is not a promise that only good things will happen to us in life, but it is a promise that God will be with us in all of the good and all of the bad in life. The most important quote, I think, comes in chapter 6, towards the end of the book, where the author says, we are meant to dance together. God dancing with us, each of us dancing with each other. God's presence through Christ is an invitation to dance with each other in life, to care for each other in life, to dance through life with each other. We are meant to dance. And God says, in the midst of the difficult times, keep on dancing. Now, Lent is a time that we sometimes focus on those difficult parts of our lives. This is one of those seasons when it's okay to say, you know, I don't do some things quite like I know I should. And the world isn't quite like I think it should be. There's a lot of imperfections, a lot of things that happen. Again, some of them are by our own choices. Some of them just happen. But it's a good time to look at those and say, okay, God, how in the midst of all of this do you want me to keep on dancing? One of the answers is that we're meant to dance together. We're not meant to just get out there and dance on our own. We count on others, and we provide the help and care for others so that others may dance. Most of you know by now that my life took a rather dramatic direction about 15 years ago. That's when an inner ear disease kicked in very strongly and took away a chunk of my hearing and caused some balance problems. It was bad enough that it forced me to take a leave from active ministry for about a year and a half. I was not able to be in ministry. That was right before I came to Silver Lake, 1 decade ago. And through those 15 years, as my hearing has continued to be impaired in various ways, I've fairly constantly and consistently looked for places and people and things to do where I find some care and some inspiration. Looking for people who could relate in some way with the challenge of being hearing impaired. It's led me over the years to some contacts with some wonderful people and wonderful communities of hard of hearing and deaf people. Wonderful people that work with those folks. I've been blessed over the years to engage in sign language class every now and then that's offered. And to not only learn sign language, but to be with people that are learning sign language and have deaf or hard of hearing people as part of their family. I found a connection with all of those folks. One of my doctors clearly said at the beginning of all of this that I will eventually go deaf. So I carry that with me, and I know that, and I know that my connection with those folks who keep on dancing in the midst of some challenges is a wonderful inspiration to me, and it's a connection that I have really found beneficial and helpful over the past few years. The contact with those communities of folks has reminded me that in this dance of life we dance together. And really that's what we all do. We look for those connections with people that will motivate us, will help us, will inspire us, will simply cry with us sometimes, certainly will journey with us in the journey of life. And we look for those people that have those special connections that specific struggles that we have. And we say, wow, they're kind of having that same struggle, and there's something we can do together to help us through that. So it was about 6 years ago at the Kansas East Annual Conference, that big meeting of all the ministers of the Eastern Third of Kansas, a representative from all the United Methodist churches, that I encountered a group in worship. I was surprised by that group. I'm often surprised at annual conference. I try to do my preparation and reading for it, but especially in the worship services, there's always some pleasant and wonderful surprises. That group was Hands of Glory. And there they were on the stage in worship. At that time, we were worshiping in the gymnasium at Baker. We're now at the Church of the Resurrection in Overland Park, and they've been to both venues, they've been to both places, but they started out when we were at Baker. That was the first time I saw them. And as I experienced them in worship with all these hundreds of other people, tears came to my eye, and my heart felt strangely warmed and comforted. Just to see this group of folks who are part of this whole dynamic of using a different kind of language, a different kind of movement and motion, a different kind of way to communicate God's Spirit and Christ's light. I thought, you know, this is a group that's doing exactly what Jesus challenges us to do in the Gospel of Matthew. Go be the light of the world. Because there's someone out there that needs some light. Someone who needs to connect with you and see Christ through you. But the group has done even more than that. They've done what the book of Revelations talks about. They've said, you know, these words about this future vision where there isn't going to be any more crying, and there isn't going to be any more pain, and it's all going to be good. That future vision doesn't have to be just in the future. That's something that actually we can bring upon the earth now. Because the God we worship is the God of now. The God we worship said, I'm going to be with you now. I'm going to send Christ to remind you of that, and you're going to dance and walk and journey through life together, and you're going to help each other and be the light for each other and to guide each other, not just in the future, but now. You're going to help dry the tears. You're going to help hold those hurt. You're going to connect with those that you can connect with to say there's hope, and there's life, and there's love. We're meant to dance now with each other through the journey, through the good and through the bad. And God says, keep on dancing. I want to turn it over to the Hands of Glory this morning. They're going to take the message from here. They're going to share their movement. I know that they're a bit small in number this morning. They've got some folks in their group that are facing some health challenges. And I know that throughout the years they've had larger, smaller numbers. But we're just happy that you all are here this morning, the ones that are here. And I'm going to turn it over to you and let you continue our message this morning with your wonderful movement and music.
I'm Carolyn Elder, and I'm the director of Hands of Glory. And a lot of what you said is very true. We come and go, and we all have difficulties. We have some sad times, we have some good times, and this is Lent, and sometimes we think of those things. Our group started because my nephew married a young lady who was deaf, and it just sort of came from that I started to sign the music, and it just seemed to come. It's a God thing. So many times you just say it's a God thing. We're going to share some music with you this morning, so I've turned this